Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a new Telecom Review virtual panel series. Today, it's our panel is entitled Technology Chiefs Delves into the 5G Advanced. I'm going to give you a quick panel outline. Multiple operators across the globe have started to deploy 5G Advanced 3-carrier component, 3CC, aggregation networks at scale, targeting 5 gigabits per second downlink rates for ultra low latency and connectivity experiences. In addition, many operators are introducing a new experience-based monetization model as they transition to 5G advanced settings for digital transformation. As part of our virtual panel series, Telecom Review session titled Technology Chief Delves into the 5G Advanced, which is today on the 22nd of August, we will provide a frank and transparent conversation with the technology gurus to explore the nuances of this transformation technology. Our panel of industry experts will shed light on the current trends in 5G advanced adoption and digital transformation outcomes through the following topics: augmenting 5G success in the 5.5G era and tapping into the potential of operator revenue growth, commercial 5.5G and F5.5 gigabyte optical network deployments, impact of 5G advanced in the mobile industry, such as applications and use cases, roadmap for future collaboration and partnership, building the 5G advanced infrastructure, such as policies and regulations, and the integration of 5G ecosystem for 5G advanced era. I would like to introduce our esteemed moderator, Ray Mota, CEO of ACG Research. Ray is recognized as an expert in topics relating to networks, managed services, operational efficiency, and business modeling. He has been the keynote speaker for global telecom events. His insightful commentaries and analyses have been published in the Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, Bloomberg, few telecom magazines, MSNBC, CNN Money, Forbes, Fortune, Business Week, New York Times, San Francisco Chronicle, and other industry publications. Ray, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Isam, and welcome everyone to this webinar. I appreciate your time, and one of our goals is for the audience is to provide what we call a thoughtful, informative information moving forward. And honestly, with this lineup of prestigious speakers, I'm excited and confident that we'll be able to achieve that and add value for you. So as I mentioned, I was a former CTO actually in Wall Street, where I used to design and implement a lot of the wide area networks and trading floors. And I tell people, working in Wall Street, that's where I lost my hair. I used to have a good set of hair. So we have an excellent panel and a good balance between some elite vendors in the mobility space and some service providers that are working in state-of-the-art technology. And what I'll do with the group itself, I'll go over the names and their titles, and then I'm going to allow them individually I'll call their names to introduce more of their bios, very prestigious. So by starting from the lineup, we have Saif Al-Shukri, who's Department Head of Radio Network Planning for mobile and fixed at Ooredoo at Oman. We have Noman Waheed, who's CTO for the Middle East of mobile networks for Nokia. We have my good friend Ayush Sharma, who's CTO for StarHub. And we have Dr. Mohamed Madkour, who's Vice President of ICT Strategy and Marketing for Huawei Middle East and Central Asia. And last but not the least, we have Abdullah Abou Chaer, who's Director of Data Management and Cognitive Service at DO. So maybe what just will start is, Saif, if you could just go over what your current role is and your background, and then I'll just pass the names from there.
Thank you, Ray, and good evening for all the participants for this informative session. My name is Saif Al-Shukri. I started my career with Ericsson, basically. I was on the vendor for 2 years. Then I moved to the operator. With total experience now, 20 years. I started with optimization for 7 years. Then I moved to the quality. It was a new department. It will be set up. I was setting up the new department for the quality. And our main goal at that time is to move from NOC to SOC. And was able to achieve it, alhamdulillah. Then I moved to planning. I'm now in the planning heading since 2020. And this is the major profile about myself. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Norman, if you can go next.
Hello, hi, assalamu alaikum, and good afternoon, good evening from my side. So I'm Noman Waheed. I'm working as a CTO for mobile networks in the Middle East for Nokia, based out of Dubai. I've been working in the industry for more than 25 years, had the pleasure of working in different regions as well, in North America, Asia, Europe, and Middle East. So we've been very instrumental in launching some of the key technology within the Middle East, starting with LTE, and now since 2018-19 with the 5G launches in the network. So I'm looking forward to be part of this exciting panel. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Ayu, if you want to go next.
Sure. Ayush Sharma, by title CTO, engineer by heart, and I had the privilege and the honor to be part of telecom industry for last almost 2 decades. And I'm very honored and privileged to be part of this panel and knowing Ray for many years, and very excited to be sort of sharing, given the opportunity to share our sort of deployment experiences and learning experiences around 5G.
Thank you. Thank you. Mohamed, if you want to go next.
Hi, everybody. My name is Mohamed Madkour. I belong to Huawei, Middle East and Central Asia region. I work for anything that has anything to do with ICT success, business success, technology success, strategy. We serve a lot of customers. I spend a lot of my time working in Huawei headquarters in Shenzhen, but I just moved to this wonderful region in the Middle East based out of Dubai, like few months back, 3 or 4 months back. Very happy to be here, very excited to be in the panel. And this is one of the actually happiest tasks, you know, that to be part of this wonderful panel, having nice discussion, learning a lot. So I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you. I appreciate you joining. Abdullah, if you want to go next.
Yeah, so good evening, everyone, or good morning, depending where you are. So my name is Abdullah, and I've been in the telecom industry for the past 15 years. I've handled different roles in planning, implementation, optimization, customer experience, and finally, I'm now handling multiple roles. So data management, automation, digital transformation, and besides my operational role of acceptance, change management, and performance management. I'm really happy that I'm with you guys here and with our guests and our online audience. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, gentlemen. Now, for the audience, we'll have gather your questions. Feel free to put them in the question panel, and at the end of our discussion, we'll have some poll question. So I ask for your participation. And one of the things that's interesting, we were talking earlier, and it's funny because we're so used to mobile that Mohamed was talking about the fact like, oh, I've got to use a PC to do this. And it's just pretty interesting, the progress that we've seen in the trust in the mobility technology and how it's transformed everything from that perspective. Now, if we look at by history perspective, I was talking to Dr. Mewana from Khalifa University, who did a brilliant job of explaining what he called the Gs. He said, Ray, the way I break up the Gs is we have 2G, which is related to mobile voice. We have 3G, which is related to mobile data. We have 4G, which is related to mobile internet. And we have 5G, which is related to things. And then we either have 5.5G or 5G advanced or 6G, which is related to mobile intelligence. So I thought it was worthwhile mentioning that. Now, by way of history, to set up the stage for the audience, I think it's worthwhile talking about why we went to 5G in the first place, right? And since we have such a prestige group of panelists there, they can correct me if I miss anything or if I misstated anything. So if we look initially at the motivation when I talked to some of the executives as a CEO in this space, the initial concept of moving to just 5G itself, it was about ultra low latency. We saw going from 4G, where you were talking about between 30 to 50 milliseconds in 4G, to as low as 1 millisecond in 5G. And that ultra low latency becomes very important for what we call real-time applications or applications that need immediate response type capability, right? And the other part is what we call the enhanced speed, right? Or the speed where we see targets of about, let's say in 4 megs, about 1 gig in peak downloads to as high between 5 to 10 gigs, 5 to 10 gigs on the 5G area. And in that case is what I see the motivation with that is related to the enhanced user experience and some of the applications that are related to real-time streaming, cloud computing, gaming, and any of these rich type application. And the other component was related to what we call mass device communication. While 4G could handle about 100,000 devices, 5G, you're talking about a 1 million type connections within a per square foot or kilometer from that perspective, which is a lot of devices, right? And then the other part initially is related to network slicing. And I remember when the organization came to me to talk about network slicing, I was a hardcore routing engineer. I'm like, well, I've been doing that with VRF and MPLS network. Well, this is a little different. This is related to the mobile from an end-to-end perspective. And with the introduction of 5G is the concept of mobile slicing that allows the operators to create these multiple virtual networks in a single physical 5G network. And each of these slices could be optimized for a specific use case, which it was very limited in the 4G component. And then 2 other components was related to capacity and spectrum efficiency, where we saw 5G utilizations where they're using bands of massive MIMO and beamforming, which creates a lot of efficiency on how you do spectrum efficiency and network capacity. And then the last piece is related to what we call the green network or energy efficient, where there was a lot of goals to make the network run more efficient, right? So by looking at the history for this particular panel, we're looking at, okay, why and some of the things related to 5G Advanced, or some people call it 5.5G. So feel free to use this interchangeably. And the way we broke up the discussion, there's primarily 3 buckets. We have infrastructure questions related to that. We have implementation and monetization. So maybe I'll start with the infrastructure piece of it. And if we look at it, maybe Mohamed, we'll start with you there, is what are some of the developments that you see in 5G Advanced adoption across some of these geo areas? And then after that, anybody else could fill in for that.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Ray, for your introduction. And I actually wanted to start from where you ended.
Good.
5G Advanced actually is a natural upgrade for the 5G capabilities to fulfill the promise that you just mentioned. You mentioned a lot of great things, massive communication, massive machine type communications, and ultra latency. However, when it comes to release 15, 16, and 17, it didn't really fulfill the whole thing. So just to clarify that 5G Advanced or 5.5G is not another generation. I guess 5G and 5G Advanced, they are all under the 5G era, that we're all working together on the standard 3GPP release 18, 19, and 20. So before I tell you the what is the update for 5G Advanced globally, which we see a lot of things happening, especially this year, 2024, which is the year of 5G Advanced, to be honest. Let's talk about the success of what 5G had in the last 5 years. So basically, you can talk about 1.8 billion users until now, half of them in China, more than 300 networks, 40% the population coverage all over the world. Although the 5G penetration of connectivity is about 20%, but it carries 30% of the traffic, making up about 40% of the revenue. More and more of the ecosystem for 5G, you have more than 3,000 types of terminals, half of them smartphones, 12% CPEs. You have T-boxes for cars. You have spot MiFi, different types of ecosystem products or terminal products that are there in 5G, which will really make it the most successful generation. Like all of those happened in 5 years. In 4G, I guess it took us many more years, like I think maybe 7 or 8 years to do. Yeah, exactly. So 7 years. So with that being said, the ambitions of some of the operators and the countries all over the world to continue that path, pushed by the demand in the market, pushed by the ambitions of the government that you will see, especially here in the Middle East area. We will see that this year actually it is the year that a lot of deployment has started. So the focal points in the world for 5G Advanced, first of all, we have to consider China. China has been taking a lot of actions and a lot of deployment decision, strategic factors, so that they can, have a great 5G success and also continuous 5G advance. I'm sure right now globally we have about 6 million 5G base stations, 4 million of those in China. Now, looking at how many of those base stations can be transformed or can be upgraded to 5G Advanced, you will see there are tens of thousands of base stations in China. They are already in operation for 5G Advanced. Only in Shanghai, there is about 15 or 20,000 base stations, 5G Advanced base stations. For one of the features of 5G Advanced, like RedCap, for example, right now there are more than 500,000 base stations already software upgraded, release 18, working on RedCap, which we will talk about it later. So on and so forth. That's about China, and of course the scale in China is unique. But look at what is happening in here, GCC countries. In GCC countries, they are one of the key focal points. We're really turning the eyes of the world here from what the operators are doing here. Every country in the GCC country, they announce their strategy, no matter 10 gigabit per second city, 10 gigabit per second capital, 10 gigabit per second country. I think at some point it will turn into 10 gigabit per second GCC area of what's happening here in the UAE, in Saudi, in Qatar. I don't want to forget anyone. So you will have many base stations, and I guess we have operators here, members in the panel. I will let them talk, but they are really also pioneer in 5G Advanced. If you get out of the GCC area, you will see a lot of I would say not proof of concept, but a lot of trials, verifications. For example, in Latin America, in Brazil, Claro is doing a lot of verification in millimeter wave. In Europe, there are also a lot of working in 5G Advanced, 3CC carrier aggregation. Also a millimeter wave. Finland also is doing something. DNA, I remember, did something like that. Verizon in the US, they are, after the release 18 got frozen, they are also working there. But really, the key focus now for all of the advancement and commercial deployment, China, and seconded by GCC area, and a lot of trials in those other places. Ecosystem and 5G Advanced is there. Right now, I think we have, this year, we'll have more than 40 terminals, 5G Advanced. The chipset is already there. The RedCap chips products there. We can talk about it later when we talk about business opportunity. So even the ecosystem for 5G Advanced, you have phones now that cover 3CC carriers aggregation, no matter China bands or GCC area. So that's very much, I don't want to take the whole time.
No, it's good. I think it was an excellent background. I think you mentioned something that I should have touched on. It's about the phones being able to support some of this part, which becomes an important. So I think that was, does anybody want to add to some of the points of Mohamed? Just feel free to jump in. If not, we'll move on to the next discussion. So part of it, and thank you, Mohamed. I think that was a good summary because you did a good job of filling all my gaps, right? I didn't know it was 4 million just out of out of China. That's interesting, massive growth there. Now, if we take more and we stay in the implementation track, and we look at and delve into some of the technical parts, right? What are some of the key technical challenges, especially for the operators and then some of the other people who join from a vendor point of view, that you face in deploying 5G, 3CC aggregation networks, and how are you addressing those challenges to target some of these high download speeds? And I think Saif, you wanted to start part of that discussion, if you don't mind, and then we'll lead it to the rest of the group there.
Thank you, Ray. Yes, you are right. Actually, 5G, it comes with its own cost of complication in terms of implementation. So basically, one of the main major player, I would say, in achieving high throughput or 3CC definitely is the spectrum availability. The country, the sub-6 gigahertz already using other technology. So one of the main things, or the main start to move to 3CC is to rearrange your current spectrum in order to avail more spectrum for the 5G. And this one still will not be able to achieve giving you high throughput unless you mix it with millimeter wave. So basically, you need to arrange with your current, I would say, TRE or Gettery in order to avail sufficient spectrum, and you can mix it with sub-6. It's one of the main things, challenge, where we already done kind of rearrangement with our current spectrum, and we moved the spectrum for the 5G. The other main challenge we really face it is backhauling. When we talk about 4G and I would say 5G with one carrier, we was talking about maybe like 1 gigabit per second as backhauling. But going with 3CC and millimeter wave, definitely we are talking about higher throughput in the backhauling. So from our side, what we have done, we have started a fiberization project where we connected the fiber for most of the site. And wherever there's a challenge, because of the clutter here in Oman is a bit challenging in some area, or the rural area, where we can't really deploy the fiber, we have deployed the E-Link the option. And definitely the E-Link, it comes with its own as well complication, because currently we're using the E-Link on the 80 gigahertz, where the point-to-point is 3 kilometers, you can't exceed 3 kilometers. So this is one of the challenges as well. So we are mixing between the E-Link and microwave, and plus with the fiberization project, in order to avail the required, I would say, throughput in terms of the transmission. The other challenge, as really we are facing outside, is the device compatibility. You already mentioned at the beginning that even though there's some in the market still supporting millimeter wave, but sometimes I think it's dependent on the market. Here, maybe in the TC market, maybe it's less handsets supporting millimeter wave along with the sub-6 gigahertz. But in the other region where they already start, like China or the America, they have a handset which is supporting the millimeter wave along with the sub-6 gigahertz. So I think one of the challenges here now, where we need to really to align with the manufacturer and as well with the vendor, that the new handset comes on this market supposed to mix or to support as well the millimeter wave to be ready for the 5G advance. And I think one of the, play a major role as well with the vendor, if really there is more demand from the operators, either, I mean, here in GCC or in another country, in terms of handset supporting millimeter wave along with other carriers, then I think it's kind of a trade-off between the demand and between the cost of the handset, because the cost of the handset now or the devices which is supporting the millimeter wave is really costly, which not everyone can really avail it. And could be also one of the options that you will not go to deploy the millimeter wave or the 3CC everywhere in the country, but you can be more selective in the hotspot wherever you have a demand really. Then or could be there's a demand from the business or from the enterprises that you can avail it part of the deal to avoid, to provide the solution along with the devices to support them to get benefit of the advanced or advanced 5G. One of the challenges as well is the integration, because currently now going with the sub-6 carriers and millimeter wave, you need to deploy your own AAUs. For example, currently now, For here in Oman, we moved 2.3 and we kept it for the 5G, along with the C-band. And going with the millimeter wave, so you'd have one AAUs for millimeter wave. Luckily now, there is already available in the market the dual band AAUs for the sub-6 to 2.3, along with the 3.5. However, going with 2.6, for example, still not available, as my knowledge. Maybe Mohamed from Huawei can correct me. Going with all of these challenge carriers, it will really, you need to be more careful in terms of the integration of the site load. You don't have really sufficient space. Therefore, sometimes you need to kind of extra cost to replace your existing antenna with the AAUs, the dual band AAUs, in order to avail more spaces and can accommodate more carriers on terms of the site integration. The other challenge as well is the traffic balancing. We're talking about here millimeter wave, where all of us knows the penetration or the phenomena of the millimeter wave is less compared in terms of the penetration compared to sub-6. So when it comes really to balancing the traffic between the sub-6 carriers and millimeter wave is really challenging due to the penetration of the millimeter wave. So all of this challenge really need to be addressed and need to be taken in consideration while going ahead with the advancement or the 5G advance. That's my side. Maybe my colleagues can add from their side.
Yeah, no, Saif, I think it was good because understanding the challenge. And I mean, I think we've seen when we move from other generations, the backhaul has always been a concern because people tend to use it more. Does anybody want to add to some of the parts of Saif there?
Yeah, maybe just, I'd probably just add from my side. So I think I would like to echo what Saif was mentioning about the capacity requirement from an infrastructure point of view and the device ecosystem. And I think in particular in GCC countries, I think I can say that we are blessed with spectrum, right? So, I mean, if we only look at from a UAE perspective, like they have 300 megahertz of spectrum in TDD spectrum, sub-6 gig. So 200 megahertz in 3.5 and 100 in 2.6. And we started to deploy 3CC Indus network since last year, right? So we did the demonstration on Qualcomm device the year before, achieving speeds of up to 4.5 gigabits per second. And if you look at the latest Ookla reports for the past few quarters, UAE has been ranked as #1 when it comes to the 5G download speeds, right? And this is related to the amount of spectrum which has been available and which has been effectively used as well. When we look at from the device perspective, I think now 3CC, when we look at TDD sub-6 gig or 4CC, having a combination of FDD and TDD spectrum is becoming more prevalent. All the latest devices are supporting the different combination. And I think we have to also make sure that from an end-to-end perspective, so we need to look at the infrastructure part. Of course, Saif pointed out some of the very practical examples when we look at this massive active antennas, either 2.3, 2.6, or 2.3, when the capacity needs and we need to have more sites. And of course, the constraint that we are looking at from a site perspective in terms of deployment, right? So we need to make sure the equipment is not getting bigger, is getting more efficient. So both from an energy consumption point of view and also from a site, from a volume perspective, right? Because if you are adding more spectrum to your site, doesn't mean that you need to also double, triple the amount of the hardware. And of course, the energy efficiency needs to be kept as low as possible. And then I think the millimeter wave spectrum is something which I think for us in the region is kind of an underdog, because we have almost 3 gigahertz of spectrum available, right? Although given the constraint that millimeter wave brings with the higher penetration losses and also related to the short range because of the physics of millimeter wave spectrum. But I think this is important to make sure that when CSPs like DO and Oman Tel and StarHub, they are focusing on customer experience, they don't sacrifice this because they are going to use the same spectrum for verticals or the enterprise. So we can have, let's say, millimeter wave spectrum for the enterprise, which are more limited in areas, so in campuses or in factories. So we can use the spectrum to deploy private or enterprise use cases and keep the, let's say, the core of the spectrum available for the commercial users. So I think that is the also very critical part. When it comes to the ecosystem, I fully agree that currently the ecosystem, especially from device supported, more focused on North America, and which is very evident because they were the first one, AT&T and Verizon, to commercially deploy millimeter wave spectrum in 26 and 39 gigahertz spectrum, right? But now we see that within the region also we are getting some traction as millimeter wave spectrum is being allocated. For example, in UAE, we did the commercial trial of millimeter wave spectrum a couple of years ago. So we have already sites running using millimeter wave spectrum. And then you'll see also some enterprise, let's say, cases coming up that could benefit from millimeter wave spectrum as well. Right. Thanks.
Thank you.
That's from my side.
Yeah, no, that's great. Anybody else want to add to it, or we'll move on?
Yeah, I would like to, first I would like to echo what Noman and Saif mentioned, and probably I would like to add a couple of points here. So in terms of the site, the civil infrastructure part of the site, so one of the main challenges also that we have faced is the site load itself. So the site loading or the tower loading was enough for the 2G, 3G, 4G era, and even primarily for the initial days of the 5G. But once we started looking at the 5G Advanced, the 3CC expansions and so on, there was a big challenge there because those really antennas, AAUs, they require more site loading to on this. They load the site more. And especially because one of the initial strategies in deploying 3CC is to deploy it in the dense areas, right? Or in the areas where you have high traffic utilization. And this even puts a higher constraint and a higher challenge on those dense areas to find the right space, power, and also to modernize your civil part of the infrastructure. And as well, when it comes to the backhauling part, so let's say the upgrades from 1 gig to 10 gig, and now even we're seeing the 10 gig is not enough, so we're looking at 25 gig per second for the backhauling, and we see a challenge for the microwave for the sites that are backhauled over microwave, of course. However, most of our sites are on fiber, and still we are looking to upgrade from our 10 gig to 25 gig to cater for that increase in speeds and traffic and utilization that we have seen after our expansions in 3CC.
Thank you, Abdul. I think that's excellent, filling the gap. Anybody else want to fill it? We'll just move on to the next topic there. Now, one of the things I mentioned on seeing is the whole part about the eco system part of it. Now, if we look at, the whole 5G transformation in this space, right? How can, and maybe we'll start with the vendors first, and then if any operators want to fill into it, how can operators prepare for the integration of this technology in this 5G eco? Maybe Mohamed, we'll start with you, Norman, and then anybody else from that perspective we can go.
Yeah, let me start. I guess this is the key question. When we talk about 5G Advanced, it is not standing by itself. As mentioned, the key ISPs, they already mentioned the key problems regarding how to implement it. But 5G Advanced is in the middle, and you have a lot of domains around it, and you need to integrate that technology within. So we mentioned the issues about transport. I would like to mention issues about the operation and maintenance of the network, how complex the network would be after introduction of 5G Advanced, and how important you need to inject the intelligence like autonomous driving network. Even when you talk about the other integration from the ecosystem you mentioned, right? Like billing, Billing, it doesn't have, you have to cover ubiquitous amount of services, different services that also need to be transformed. Even the IT system, even when we talk about the strategy, if you hit different revenue stream like B2B or enterprise segments, now for those, they are different type of product. They are not phones anymore. They are terminal, data collection terminal, AGVs, machines and stuff like that. That also need to be integrated in a different way. Later, when you do a private network or public network, you will have to transform that into an edge compute network. So you will have to really mix between an IT service like data centers, how they are planned, the latency circles, the privacy architecture, how you integrate the radio side with the IT side, the transport side. And finally, also, you need to consider the stakeholders, like your partners. Your partners when it comes to partners in the project, no matter whether they are integrator, cloud providers, and then later, I think I wanted to talk a little bit in a different question about AI. That's a totally different story by itself when it comes to be integrated. So when it comes to integrating that technology and to make it operable in different segments or two different segments, consumers, homes, enterprises, industry verticals, with those different scenarios, with those different domains, let me tell you, the picture is ugly. But, it is ugly, but fortunate enough, we have a lot of innovations in the market, and we have innovative operators as well. They have the passion, they are transforming. We've seen now as Huawei globally, a lot of our operators are really doing digital transformation in different domain with all what it comes with to really integrate that and make money out of this. The investment is large. It is not really, we have to monetize that. We have to come, it have to come with its price and the investment that everybody did to grow. So this is just some key insights about the sides of the integration, if you will, of the technology in the ecosystem.
Norman, if you want to add to it?
Yeah, okay. So when we look at 5G Advanced, so I think it's more like an evolution rather than a revolution. I mean, the bases have been already set for 5G from release 15, 16, and 17. And if we recall, let's say the main drivers, when we look at the 5G itself, if you remember the triangle, when we were looking at the enhanced mobile broadband, we were looking at massive connectivities and the ultra reliable low connectivity, right? So those are already established in release 15, 16, right, and 17. And now we are, I would say, we are at the midway of 5G technology. Since we started the first commercial trial of, let's say, commercial rollout of 5G back in April 29th in South Korea. And since then, I think we have come a long way. We have, according to GSA, we have close to 300 plus networks. Out of those, almost like 50 networks have deployed also standalone as well. And I think standalone, it will set the base for deployment of any 5G advanced features and functionality. So at Nokia, we're taking 5G advanced and defining them by the 4 E's. So let me walk you through for each of these E's. So the first E is related to the experience. So experience is beyond the enhanced mobile broadband, which was the focus of the previous releases. So when we look at enhancing the customer experience, like Ray, you were mentioning in your introduction, that we are looking at enhancing, how do we enhance the customer experience? So we are introducing features like XR, extended reality, virtual reality, because data is, mobile data is still like 70, 80% of the traffic carried today, right? So there's a lot of focus on video today. So, and we are looking at mobility to reduce the mobility interruption time almost down to 0. We're looking at latency. Now with release 18, we are introducing further enhancement to meet the initial requirements of latency below 5 milliseconds. And then, of course, the previous releases, we were focusing more on the downlink throughputs. We mentioned earlier about the 5cc or the 6cc's that have been done already. Now we are looking at how we improve the uplink, because we need to ensure that as the data traffic grows in the uplink, when we go to, let's say, meetings, or we do video conferencing or streaming, uplink traffic is important. So we need to focus on the uplink performance. So next, E is for the extension. So extension into new segments beyond the eMBB. And these can be the new cases which are coming to the scene now, especially with the non-terrestrial networks or direct to device, right? We see there's a lot of traction on providing connectivity through satellites. Nokia is partnering with AST to provide satellite connectivity direct to device to the different operators. I think now we see AT&T and Verizon have commercially signed agreement with AST. We also see a lot of traction with the GCC countries to look into satellite or direct to device connectivity. And also, we look at this RedCap, so reduced capability. We started in release 17 and has an evolution in release 18 by reducing the bandwidth down to 5 megahertz compared to in release 17, which was 20 megahertz. So we talk about eRedCap. And then also the definition of sub 5 megahertz bandwidth for application like FRMCS, which is basically Future Railway Mobile Communication System, which is a successor to GSMR. So all these functionality will make it easier for FRMCS to migrate to the 5G standards. And then we look at the third E, which is expansion. So expansion into areas which were not traditionally offered by the CSPs. For example, traditionally the synchronization of the networks has been provided by GPS, and now we have seen that at some time GPS cannot be so let's say reliable, because it's prone to also some interference that we have seen within the region and also globally. So in the standardization, now 5G would be able to provide its own synchronization source. So we have alternative to GPS that the operators can offer GPS or sync as a service to the different customer, for example, for banking, where synchronization is important for the transactions. And then also positioning with the release 18, we are going down to less than 5 centimeters from a positioning perspective, which can have numerous application for enterprise when we're looking at guiding the AGVs, the automatic guided vehicles in warehouses, or when you go to the mall, you want to have direct, let's say the shortest path going to the nearest shop. So all these can enable the different use cases for our CSPs, which are looking for new revenue stream. And the last E is basically talking about the operational excellence. So as we introduce the technology, we need to make sure it becomes more efficient. So we are looking at introducing AI and ML for network efficiency, right? So as the network gets more complicated, we need to make sure that, we do the work with the minimum requirements. So it's not about taking or reducing the headcount, but it is talking about the efficiency, how we do the network operations or the deployments. We talk about energy efficiency that I touched upon earlier, that as we introduce more technologies, more spectrum, we need to make sure that both from a hardware and a software perspective, we become more efficient, right? So those are the 4 E's. So experience, extension, expansion, and operational excellence. So standalone, like I mentioned, this is provides the base for deployment for any 5G advanced networks. 5G advanced also provides simplicity in terms of networks, because now compared to the NSA, where you need to also have an anchor to the LTE, right? So the UE is basically transmitting on 2 technology, which also impacts your energy consumption. So standalone, you only have 5G, so that helps also better to save the energy. And from an operational perspective, it's more simpler. You're looking at only a single technologies. And we have seen multiple operators across the globe, like TMO, US, Reliance Jio in India, that have gone fully standalone network. Within the region, also do Etisalat operators in Bahrain. I mean, they have already started to go commercial with standalone network, which is a good trend because now they're getting prepared and ready for the 5G advanced networks. So that's, I mean, in short, I mean, how I see the operators can prepare for 5G advanced in their networks.
Thank you, Norma. Does any operator want to add to it, or we'll maybe move on to the next topic there? I'll pause for a minute. If not, maybe one last question regarding the implementation is, you know, we're talking about some of these evolving areas of 5G, but how do we consider or anticipate some of the advancements and some of the next steps that go beyond 3CC aggregation network that operators could prepare for to stay ahead of because it's a competitive market, right? In a competitive landscape. Maybe Saif, if you want to lead this and we'll have a discussion on that point.
Yeah, actually, you said correctly. I mean, we expect high carrier aggregation. Maybe going for the 4CC or 5CC, or another word we can say we are going maybe with 6G. And as well, we're expecting more integration between the network and between AI and ML. I know that Mohamed Madkour has more like eager to talk about AI and ML, but yes,
No.
The AI and ML will be really core integration in the coming advancement of the network. And in order for us really to achieve higher throughput or significant data throughput, plus as well low latency, it comes with its own cost in terms of readiness. So as I started at the beginning, there was some challenge currently going ahead with the 5G advance. Then it's good that to be ready to avoid all of that hassles, to be ready for the upcoming advancement. And I will start with the infrastructure where I end up in the first topic. So really we need to be ready in terms of transmission. And as my colleague as well, Abdullah said, that 10 gig even is not enough. So we need really to be ready to have proper backhauling on our site, going more than 10 gigahertz on, maybe it could be one of the, I mean, fiber could be, this is the main, I would say, element media in order to connect. However, I think in some country, it'd be a challenge really as we're going for the fiber. Then the microwave with the high band, and then maybe in the 60 to 100 gigahertz, it could be an option. We go with the bigger band to facilitate more bandwidth for transmission. And the other thing I would say as well as support from the vendor, in terms of the AIUs, if I'm going now with the millimeter wave, I'm going to have its own AIUs, then as with sub-6, its own AIUs, then it's rather for us to go with unified AIUs. We can support sub-6 carriers plus other millimeter wave in order to avail the required space on the site integration. The other challenge as well, since we're talking about AI and ML, we expect really a core integration in AI and ML as part of the advancement network or the new network in the, for example, I would say technologies on 6G. So what we need to do as an operator to be ready for AI and ML, I think one of the things we need to break down our thinking instead of thinking normally how to tune or optimize or handle an operation excellency in normal way. We should really focus more and more on implementing AI and ML solution to be fully automated. We're talking about now here about expected fully automated network, a self-healing network. This one really can't be achieved with the normal thinking. We need to really to think or deviate our thinking to start using more ML and more AI solution as part of our solution. And this one as well will link to our current skill set. We need to be ready in terms of the resources that they can really utilize all of this available AI ML solution to avail the, I would say, to have able to implement it on the right way and as well on the right position. One of the things as well, I think we need really support as well from the vendor in order to move. Maybe when we talk about AI and ML, it could be more on the core side, but we need also to be pushed down more on the radio side in order to have AI solution on the radio side, in order to have multi-carriers handling power consumption, lesson utilization, because now we need really to open, I would say, the spectrum and to have fully managed based on the demand. And this one really, it requires full support from the vendor in order to go or to implement really a proper solution on the radio side. The other things I would say is the collaboration with the operator and with the content creators. Currently now we have the 5G advance. I would say still we're not fully monetizing it. And if you're going with 6G and you're going really with significant huge data, then you need to bridge the link between the customer demand and between as well the operator. So I think we need kind of collaboration as an operator with the content creator to come up with solution or application that really it will have high demand on our from the network side. The other thing as well, I think without government support and without government regulation, this one still will be a challenge. Now we're talking about enterprises or the business. The demand on the enterprises or the business still it will really not break down our the network demand. You need really kind of fully, I would say, government support and regulation to push some of the vertical solution or the vertical segment solution. For example, when we talk about autonomous car, it cannot be really dealt it as separate from the government. It's supposed to be government who's really leading the autonomous car or some big project solution. This one it will create the demand for the operators in order to come up with the solution and as well to come up with right, I would say, solution that can really use and can maximize the utilization of the network. It will not be kind of investment from the operator where there's no demand from the local or from the enterprise or the business. The other thing as well, I could say the last point from my side is the customer engagement. Basically, what's really to create the demand for the network is the customer. So I think we need kind of collaboration between what's there as a network and what's there as an offer from the network operator in terms of the infrastructure, what I can really do and what can I avail for the customer and what the customer really needs. I think currently now going huge development in terms of the network, going with the 5G advancement, with 6G as well, and so on. But when it comes to the demand from the customer, still the demand is not there. So in order to, I would say, maximize utilization at the same time to close the bridge, we need to really to be more close to the demand of the customer in order to be really, I would say, investing on the right path. That's from my side.
Yeah, no, that's excellent. Anybody else want to add to it? If not, this is good. I think this is good from an infrastructure perspective, and thank you. I think I'm learning a lot too. Maybe if we could move the discussion from infrastructure to the implementation side of it, and if we look at the whole concept of, if we look at 3GPP, recently we talked about that they concluded the specs on release 18 on 5G Advanced being ready, right? But what does that mean for the industry, right? And how critical is this for the operators and the vendor to adhere to the 3GPP specs, right? As we look moving forward of how do we promote this from a 5G Advanced perspective. And maybe Abdullah, if you can start first, and then we'll move on to some of the other folks there.
Sure, thank you, Ray. So one of the first points in standardization is interoperability, and there are multiple aspects when it comes to this point. So one of them would be the interoperability between different domains. So we're talking about RAN, transport, core, etc. Other aspect of interoperability is interoperability between equipment vendors. So between Huawei, Nokia, and the big names in the industry that need to be interoperate. So the operator won't be locked in with one equipment vendor. As well, this will help in having an interoperability with other, for example, IT systems. And this is very, very crucial as there are different parameters when it comes to the integrations with our IT systems. Besides all of this, you have the tracing or the tapping part. So we have seen a lot of challenges in that area where some of the tracing tools they have some limitations when it comes to tapping our 5G advanced or 5G standalone networks. And this is where equipment vendors or the OEMs jump in, and they have some solutions related to within their ecosystem that they can expose to other ecosystems. And this is where standardization can help to make sure that whatever is exposed can be read, can be exported, can be digested, and so on. The other aspect of this is the handsets, like what Saif mentioned earlier in the beginning. This is a very important aspect, and we see different handset manufacturers behave differently when we start testing them, when we start certifying them. So some of them, some handset manufacturers probably have different interpretations of the standard. And at some point in time, this creates some challenges into understanding those changes in behavior attributed to those different understanding of the standard. Of course, the other part, this will give more confidence to the operator to start investing in 5G advanced. I would recall the initial days when the hype about 5G started, where some operators were hesitant in investment because still the standard was not yet mature. And this is one of the key aspects to give confidence to the market, give confidence to the operators to start investing in 5G advanced. As well, the standardization also would help in making sure that whatever investment that has been done would last longer or would be future proof, that can be upgraded to other releases, that can accommodate multiple use cases, that can accommodate integrations with content providers, with gaming providers, and with other enablers for enterprise or B2B solutions or offers. Well, that's it from my side.
No, thank you, Abdullah. I think it's great. You touch on some very important parts. Maybe Norman, I think you have some thoughts on this as well.
Sure. Yeah, so I think exciting times for us as release 18 has just been finalized by 3GPP, was back in June, right? So now we've been able to do a lot of work when it comes to the standardization. And as I was mentioning earlier, that from a 5G advanced perspective, we are defining this by the 4E's: experience, extension, expansion, and operational excellence. From a Nokia perspective, of course, we are involved in the standardization in 3GPP. From our perspective, we are focusing more on the XR functionality. So Nokia is the repertoire for XR in 3GPP. So repertoire is somebody who basically is responsible for coming up with the ideas and then having it standardized in 3GPP. So XR is one of our, let's say, key topics in as part of 5G advanced. And then we are looking at the uplink improvements for the performance enhancements. Then we are looking also in other domains or new use cases like the UAVs, uncrewed aerial vehicle. We're looking at FRMCS, which is the railway communications for 5G. We're looking for a non-terrestrial network where we are collaborating with AST to provide direct-to-device connectivity. And I think the important part for us is also from an operational efficiency is introduction of AI ML into the operations. As I was mentioning, we are adding more spectrum to our 5G deployment. whether it's sub 6 GHz TDD and also the FDD, right? We see a lot of operators since the launch of 5G has actually started the refarming of spectrum or shutting down of 2G and 3G technologies to make the spectrum available for 5G deployment. We're talking here, we were discussing about, as Saif mentioned about, and Abdullah mentioned about 3cc or 4cc, right? So we need to ensure that we use a low band, whether it comes to 700, 600, 800, or 900, or combined with the sub 6 GHz TDD is able to extend your uplink coverage, which is the limiting factor, right? So that needs to be taken into consideration. So we are working as an end-to-end to make sure that we are working with the industry to prepare them for any 5G advanced deployment. I recall the famous proverb that if you want to go fast, you go alone, but if you want to go farther, you go together, right? And this is what we are doing, working with the likes of the standardization bodies like 3GPP. We're working with the leading chipsets like Qualcomm, MediaTek, and Samsung, and also the device vendors like Apple, Samsung, and others, right, to make sure that the feature basically tests without any flaws when we go to the network deployment. A recent use case or example I can give is about the testing of RedCap functionality that we do with commercial networks. So RedCap, based on release 17, has been available from a Nokia perspective since last year commercially, right? And now we were successfully able to test in Do Network, demonstrating the capability of what the different use cases that RedCap can bring to the operators as they look into different revenue streams, right? So basically, this is what we are trying to do to ensure the end-to-end ecosystem is developed in accordance to have the features, because it doesn't help anyone if we have the feature available from, let's say, from a RAN perspective, and we don't have a chipset support or we don't have support from the device, because then you cannot basically monetize any of the new features or functionality in the network. So that is very important from our side, that we are focusing on the whole entirety of the ecosystem when it comes to 5G advanced. And then also the important point, like I mentioned, is an evolution, it's not a revolution. So we expect that when you go to features like eRedCap or NTN, is more going to be like a software enhancement. Of course, we need to ensure the capacity is there from a baseband perspective, right? So overall, but all these different features and functionality would need to also consider how do we deploy from a network perspective to ensure that we have enough capacity at the radio side. Then we have enough backhaul capacity, like Abdullah was mentioning. We already have like the about 10 gigabits from backhaul perspective, and then in the future is going to even double if we are looking at 5G deployments. So that's it from my side.
No, thank you. And feel free to the audience to continue to add the questions. We'll find time for the questions, and for those that we don't get to, we'll kindly follow up. Now, one of the things is that, you know, we mention AI, machine learning, and as we know, there's a lot of hype related to that, but there's also a lot of hype in 5G Advanced, right? So what does that mean from a rollout perspective, and what are some of the plans that you see when you look at things like AI and ML, which we kind of touched on in a high level now? Now, Ayu, you talked about some of the type of projects and lead. Do you mind touching on some of your points and your thoughts behind this?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Ray. So I think, first of all, it was fascinating to hear the valuable insights around speed and feeds and what 5G Advanced could do and is doing. And I'm very thankful to the sort of industry peers here for sharing that valuable information. So at StarHub, maybe I'll just provide a little bit of context. We deployed 5G SA 2 years back, so we have our fair share of gains and pains of being the first or early one. We've been operating both classical 5G and Open RAN, so 5G for enterprise, with the private 5G running in Open RAN with 2 different pilots. And those pilots have been fairly successful in terms of, we just finished the first data call going over Open RAN and SA network. So it was fascinating. So there are a lot of incremental innovations which are happening, but I think the reality is that the use cases where you can commercialize and take it to the market and adoption rate is not what it was expected to be. So as an engineer, as a technologist, I'm thrilled to kind of try and bring sort of new features functionality to bear. But your OpEx, your CapEx, your ROI, if you start to look at and delivering those experiences to the consumer and the enterprises is also an equally important while we're deploying 5G advanced or equivalent sort of technology and feature set, which comes in an incremental manner. So I will be now specifically talk about sort of the AI ML, but I wanted to give a context before talking about specific projects about using the AI ML within the 5G network. So we've been in this journey from last 2 years to become more sort of hybrid multi-cloud with connectivity as an access agnostic and sort of security embedded into it. So we are at the fag end of sort of going live as a hybrid integrated cloud with 5G access, with 10 gig home broadband access, and then OTT access to the region with a very low latency. And very fortunate that companies like NPerf and OpenSignal ranked us consistently in number 2 in latency, low latency. And we were very, very privileged and honored to kind of get that accolade as well. So then obviously when you start to kind of drop these cloud services to the consumer and enterprises or bring these new experiences, so you need to look at, first for AI, which is kind of more in the productivity segment, I put it. And then you have your AI, which is used for productizing. So 5G or AI specific to 5G is within the network. I put it in productivity gains point of view. So we use some LLMs and large language models for power efficiency. Now you could do it multiple ways, and we tried both the ways. One way is to kind of work with our traditional vendors and use those LLMs and figure it out a particular golden cluster or pilot or segment or an area or a sector to see the power gains, etc. So there we kind of experienced and we realized certain power gains by shutting based on the time, based on the traffic patterns, etc., and not in the highly populated or highly dense areas, but picking up the areas which were sort of very sparse and they were antennas and the radios were not utilized. But the fundamental foundational challenge remained was you could do it on an isolated site or a sector, but if you need to apply this network wide, you need to make sure that you have a common observability, common automation, and common centralized control for anything on the data. Now that could come in classical and Open RAN RIC controller through RF. And essentially that is what we are also dabbling into as bringing the common RIC between Open RAN for enterprises and classical Mockun-based 5G, where we do active sharing with another friendly mobile operator called M1 here in Singapore. So our path to using ML for power efficiencies and other sort of beam steering, based on the application or usage in particularly dense areas, be it stadiums where, let's say, Taylor Swift summit or event is happening, or a Formula One event is happening, or similar events which are happening in the town at variety of time, is recognizing the traffic patterns and essentially network with particularly radio and the backbone. If you have enough capacity, you don't have to worry about it. But the particularly radio resources are very, very expensive. So you could, whether you could do it in a slicing way, you do it in a static, dynamic slicing way, or intent-driven slicing way, these are mechanisms for you to efficiently sort of have the network perform better with respect to those applications. And we've been trying and dabbling into all of these and had that success. But as we move, we started to realize this common and centralized control is extremely, extremely important. We rolled out slicing. We are bringing exposure now with the Kamara API gateways and bring the ISV ecosystem. Once you start to drop those services, the expectations are very high for the consumer and the enterprises. So you can't, violate the SLAs. So we want to make sure that that network availability, reliability for what is that promised is kind of up to the mark. And you have to be very, very thorough in that. And as I said, you could work with traditional, our sort of vendor supplier strategic partners, or you could do it in a way that you could leverage cloud, or you could build the competence in-house. So that's one area where we're using ML and LLMs, right? So to be specific. We're also using ML ops. I wouldn't like, oftentimes, I mean, people talk, Gen AI is obviously getting a lot of attention, and we've seen this movie played together, and it has a immense potential and usage for the telco industry. So I wouldn't belabor into those aspects and benefits, which are very generic in nature. So the other aspect where I see from a customer experience point of view, besides the chatbot integration into your ops and conversational and sort of chatbots and Gen AI applications, is customer experience. But we don't, as a telco operator, we have a demarcation point. And oftentimes your like NPS scoring when it is done, or customer, when you have as our connectivity sector is getting commoditized, if you see, we experience the electricity, we experience the water, we experience, and telco is going and connectivity is going in a very utilitarian way in that particular segment very, very quickly. And in most markets, in some markets, it's already commoditized to that level. So I think it's just when the connectivity is provided to the endpoints, be it home broadband or mobile, our observability and our automation is the network demarc point. We don't have visibility on the devices and the apps, etc. So I think that is very, very important to bake that into the network as the intent coming from the devices. So that's where we kind of like challenging the status quo, working with our traditional partners, saying, how can we bring that visibility and the matrix and the data so that it becomes the user experience is super important, not just from the 5G bars or network radio telling you that, but actually how they feel about it. So that is extremely important, that to have that some level of SDK, some level of visibility, a data aspect. So data coming from network, from the devices in a meaningful way, not the data which you want to monetize, etc., like OTT provider. I'm talking about basic hygiene data from devices. And then you have the network data, which is correlatable. And then that you have a meaningful data strategy. Now you can do wonders with ML, because at the end of the day, AI or ML or generative or non-generative is a hogwash if you don't have a solid data strategy and a solid data sort of plan. And that's another area where we're looking into it, and we started to do some pilots around customer experience, where we bring that data into the mix and apply certain sort of AI practices and tool sets, etc. The third area is kind of like around where the pain point is for most of us as telcos or a telco who are transforming into techco or cloud integrated telco, are around monetization of these assets, because everything, as I said, there's a lot of capex and opex being infused into every single generation. So it's through the ISV ecosystem, when you're opening up these API, be it Kamara or non-Kamara or whatever kind of APIs you're opening up, and you're drop shipping and bringing those partners now to deliver those services in a meaningful way, and that data and personalization, you could do it hyper-personalization, not through connectivity, and do it hyper-personalization for a wider audiences. If a young streamer who's wanting to do is bi-directional internet streaming, you could make a very specific package for that. So the AI in your billing, rating, charging is very, very important, that you can dynamically curate or build those rating plans for gamers, casual gamers, or for serious interactive streaming, sort of e-commerce sellers or influencers and so on and so forth. And then similarly, then you can sort of, once you know your customer and you're delivering that delight, you could start kind of leveraging your ISV or partners who could serve that. So in a nutshell, so this is the three areas where we're looking at AI ML. So from, I would say both from productivity and productization aspect is one, but the challenges, as I said, are fourth, which I kind of also outlined, are not fully overcame yet. So we haven't overcome those challenges, and we're in the process, and we'd love to kind of collaborate with the ecosystem and the distinguished fellow industry peers here within that space. And I'm excited about overall sort of, prospectus into how this whole cloud Lego block and then, 5G and the speeds and feeds come together to deliver those experiences.
This is excellent. I think it's good to hear from the operator some real, and you did a good job of segmenting it. Maybe what we'll do, because I want to make sure we have time for the audience questions and some of the polls. Maybe Mohamed and Norm, we can skip into some of the parts of the monetization question. We're talking about 5G Advanced, but does it provide in terms of opportunities a new revenue stream for operators to promise this superior connectivity and efficiencies? I mean, what are your two thoughts on that, Mohamed and Norm?
Yeah, the answer to your question is yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yes. And I actually, my experience, because last year I was working in China, and I have noticed very firsthand the innovations in services and the practice from the operators, not only in the starting phase of 5G Advanced, but also on how to develop successful 5G business. Basically, the key secret area there, first of all, we all know that we have different segments. We have consumer, we have homes, and we also have enterprise or industry, serving enterprise or industry. Now, in each of those segments, the key there is 5G Advanced provide a multi-dimensional experience attributes that can be monetized. And they did not exist in 5G. For example, the uplink capacity or uplink speed that was not there in 5G. So these are the kind of things we've seen that enhance or provide fresh revenue stream. I'll give you a couple of examples. For example, China Mobile, they do different tiers. First of all, they segment the markets really well. And that's another area you use AI, adding to what Ayush has mentioned. He talked about network AI, and also operational stuff. But also AI will help in really provide clear segmentation of the market, not only on the user profile, but also with the user behavior, so that you can really find out who is doing what and what package is suitable for this kind of consumer. So providing peak throughput or peak speed up to 3 gigabit per second, number one. Number two, providing tiered minimum speed, 10 megabit per second, 20 megabit per second, so on and so forth. But number three, they have different priority for the user. So this VVIP, VIP, and normal, they have those categories of the users. And they do that in a very interesting way. They put the logo, like 5G Advanced, they put that, the icon that you see in the phone, but also they put together the type of the package that you are subscribing for. For example, in China, there are more than 500,000 live streamers or TikToker or influencers, right? So these guys, they eat out of this plan. So they need a customized package when they do the live streaming. So one of the Chinese operators, they have a package for those live streamers, giving them uplink speed, giving them higher priority, giving them a larger packet, and they get double of the ARPU from these guys. Gamers, stock traders, those guys, gamers and stock traders, they need lower latency. So you can put that kind of experience attributes to them. One of the key things, and I think this is something that Ayush has alluded to when he talked about, I need some kind of hygiene data that's coming from the consumer to understand his or her experience. We have in our core network what we call IPE, Intelligent Personalized Experience Plane. And that by itself, this innovation, played a very important part when it comes to how to close loop with that customer to see the type of service he's doing. Maybe I will ask him, for example, one of our customers in Thailand, they do hotspot plan on the go. Like, for example, 5 gigabyte for half an hour for certain speed, they pay $3, something like that. I don't remember the numbers exactly. So all of those, the most important thing is that you get back to the customer telling them that, hey, you are upgraded. And I can see that in the phone. Innovative services we have in China, they have something called new calling and also cloud phone. These are one of the very first product from the operator that bridge CT and IT. So you have the cloud phone. Not only I give you the bits and bytes and volume, or even the speed, or even the priority, but also I give you certain service like IT service, no matter whether it's cloud computing, storage, even certain rights. If the operator have their own cloud like China Mobile, China Telecom, I can give you some rights to do that. Even I can give you some AI tool. China Telecom, they do a really funny thing for influencer. They give them an AI tool to make kind of drawing or creating funny things. They can use it in their plan. So AI plus services, I think it's really important. We can go on and forth, but I know I want to give some time also to the
I want
others.
to give some time to the audience.
But there are also innovation B2B. Yeah, B2B.
I think we
and
can talk on
B2H
this forever, Mohamed. Yeah, no, I appreciate it because I want to. Norm, if you could just give a one-liner, maybe, and then we'll move on to the poll. And sorry to interrupt, Mohamed. I think such a good topic there.
No, it's fine.
Yeah, I think, I mean, this is a very critical point from a CSP perspective, from the monetization, right? So I see from a 5G advanced perspective, we can look into new revenue streams when it comes to, like, as I talked about earlier, about non-terrestrial network, direct to device, enhanced RedCap, which can open up a plethora of new use cases, whether it's related to smart cities or to oil and gas facilities, or related to public safety, right? Because this can provide higher data rates compared to the Cat4 kind of devices. So this is very important, that we are opening into new revenue stream, timing as a service, or a synchronization as a service that the CSPs can offer as part of release 18. So I think all these new capabilities that 5G Advanced is offering will help operator to further optimize and also go into new revenue streams for their monetization.
Oh, that's great. And thank you. So what I'll do is I'll launch the poll questions for the audience. Feel free to put it in. And what I'll do to the group, there have been a list of questions coming in. So I'll just start in the order that I see him there, right? I see from Tanisha, question came in. It states, for developing countries with limited resources, what are the prerequisite requirements or regarding eco indicators for consumer needs necessary to move to 5G? If we could give a short point to that, anyone?
Yeah, maybe I can take the first step. So I think this is a very good point, as we see that there are quite a few challenges for operators that have not launched 5G. And one thing is to start off with the device ecosystem, to know what is the percentage of the devices that are capable to support 5G, whether it's NSA, SA, what are the bands combination that are supported by the different devices, right? Because that will define the level of preparedness for the services in the network. I mean, few examples or experience from our current launches, maybe from Jordan, we have seen that the device ecosystem has really taken off after 5G was launched. So there of course was initial device ecosystem that was supporting 5G, and that helped the operators to launch 5G services in the network successfully.
Excellent. A next question that came in is, while talking about 5G Advanced, the question is related to how our operators can monetize the existing 5 standalone or SA in a current eco environment when it gets related to 4G LTE and voice over LTE. Anybody want to address that? If not, we can move on and address it. Follow up from that perspective. So we'll follow up the next part of the question that came in, and keep filling out the polls. I'll quickly find some time with that. Is related to this question. They want to know about 5G only use cases that can be monitored at a massive level, not the enterprise only. I'm not sure if I understand that question. Anybody want to address that?
Maybe, because I think it's a good question when you look at the traditional use case, which is predominantly looking at fixed wireless access use case, which has been deployed by 40% of the commercial 5G networks today, in addition to tier-based, let's say, packages, or bundling it with different application, or with different social media platform like the IF land in South Korea, right? So what we have to realize from enterprise, they have a different requirement from the CSP. For the CSPs, we are looking at the bandwidth needs to be the highest, right? Because they're looking for the highest download speeds. But when you look at the enterprise or the verticals, they are looking at availability is the, let's say, the most or the important key factor, then the latency and the bandwidth, right? So we have to ensure that the enterprise use cases are built around those requirements, which are very different from the normal commercial UEs. And that I was talking about the different industry that we are targeting, whether it's oil and gas, or whether it's smart ports, or it's smart campuses. So all these requirements will play a key role for these enterprise use cases.
That's great. This is a really good question that I probably should have touched on as part of the discussion. Is what are the risks for 5G implementations regarding data security and privacy, and how to prevent them? Anybody want to jump into that piece, and then I'll move to the poll.
I'm happy to chime in. So Ray, if that's okay.
Please, yeah.
Yeah, so I think with the advent of AI, which is going over the top, there are numerous risks is what we see. I mean, one of the risks, I will actually give you an example that happened, and then obviously not on our network, but it's just generally in Singapore, was the deepfake call was made to a senior citizen, and he fell prey to it, unfortunately. And as a result, his pension got wiped off.
Oh, Jesus.
So the concerns, what we hear, are real. And essentially, as carriers, we obviously block scammers, and these are regulations, and these regulations happen through our regulatory bodies, and they keep updating it. So, but what we are dealing is very different beast, right? So there are security mechanisms. What people or hackers or bad actors are using is they are using the tool set, which is much more advanced. So you can't sit on your laurels and just continue to use the traditional layer 3, 4 kind of filtering and peer-to-peer filtering with each. And it needs to be done operator to operator, because you could be having an operator sit, or somebody sitting behind one operator and launching that, and you need to figure it out, and as a part of the roaming. And I think it's an industry challenge, but it needs to be localized as well through the regulatory bodies. So I think it's super important is to collaborate and work with the partners or these tech companies, to figure it out, what is the impact on the brand, and what is the impact on data privacy regulations, and you need to work with them to make sure there's a good level of flexibility and good level of ease of operations and regulations. So there's a balancing act. The second most important aspect is as your data security, as you start to cloudify certain things, you have to be super critical and important. It's super critical and important to figure it out. The data sovereignty, what the telcos are known for, the trust, and being the custodians of that data. That trust, the telco industry and the telcos continue to maintain that. And they are sitting, telcos and the banks are probably most amount of data they sit it in any region, but they don't know how to make it good use of it. But they need to do it in a responsible way and a meaningful way to delight and to drive that customer experience. Obviously, there are many knobs, many ways to do it. I'm not going to sort of, use my biased opinions to do this, but that's, to me, is the key.
Yeah, no, I think this is good. What I'll do is first of all, thanks to Telecom Review for coordinating, because I think there was a good balance between vendor and operators. I'm going to just click on end the poll here. So let me share some of the results here. If we look at it, we see from a question perspective is we see the first question was related. What is the time frame for a full-fledged 5G advanced commercial? We see that 61% of it is within 5 years, and about 26 within 2 to 3 years. Well, so that's actually promising to see. The next poll question we had about 94% of the people answer it was 5G advanced network ideal for new services. 53% stated in the enterprise segment, which is interesting, and then 35% into the consumer space. And then the other question was related to the industry most likely to be transformed by 5G. This was kind of interesting because I was looking forward to the answer for this, and number one came out.
Manufacturing.
Yes, you're right. Spot on. You're right. Yeah, it's the whole automotive manufacturing space for that area. But number two, and entertainment was like in that piece of it there, which is good. And then the last part of the poll question was related to what are the biggest challenges rolling out, which we kind of touched based on a lot with the audience. But it is just about the cost of the infrastructure. About 47%, address some concerns, and then 35% mention regulatory and allocated. So with that, I'll stop sharing. Again, I'd like to really thank the audience for joining in, and I'd like to thank these prestigious members. And sorry for the interruptions. You guys did a brilliant job of addressing the question. I think for me, I'm going to probably write a blog. And for those questions that I didn't get to answer, we will follow up with it. With that said, thank you, gentlemen, and thank your audience for joining. I bid you farewell, or as they say, shukran. Shukran. There, if I said it right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye.